and welcome to Front Row Cinema Club. This is episode 2 of my history of horror, and today we'll be covering the 1930s. You don't have to, but if you want to watch episode 1 first, I'll put a link up for you. Let's begin.
How do you do? Mr. Carl Laemmles feels it would be a little unkind to present this picture without just a word of friendly warning. It is one of the strangest tales ever told. I think it will thrill you. It may shock you. It might even horrify you. So if any of you feel that you do not care to subject your nerves to such a strain, now is your chance to, well, we've warned you.
In 1928, in the last years of silent cinema, control of the studio Universal Pictures was passed from Carl Laemmles Sr. to his son, the 21-year-old Carl Laemmles Jr. Laemmles Jr. was not the savviest businessman to have ever existed, and he enjoyed taking risks. He had a particular interest in producing horror pictures, and it was he that pushed for Universal to acquire the rights to Bram Stoker's immensely popular novel, Dracula. Todd Browning was signed on to direct. He'd wanted the film to star Lon Chaney, the man of 1,000 faces, but Chaney was now dead. The search for a new Count Dracula was on. Universal's Dracula was to be based on a 1924 stage adaptation, taking the novel's various locations and condensing them so that the story could mainly take place in drawing room settings, saving a lot on production costs. The play was not well received critically, but proved massively popular with audiences. Several actors played the Count on stage, but by the time Dracula made its way to Broadway, someone cost-effective was desired for the role. Enter Bela Lugosi. Bela Lugosi was born Bela Blasko in Lugos, Hungary, now Romania, in 1882. In 1913, he joined the Hungarian National Theatre of Budapest. When the Austro-Hungarian monarchy collapsed in 1918, the political situation in Hungary became highly unstable, and as executions of communists ran rampant, Lugosi, politically left-leaning and a union activist, was no longer safe in his home country. Passing through Germany, he eventually found himself in America, where he continued his acting career. Lugosi did not speak English, and so at first he played for exclusively Hungarian audiences. When he transitioned to taking English-speaking parts, he learned his lines phonetically, and yet still gained rave reviews for his performances. In 1927, his life would change forever when he took the role of Dracula in the show's Broadway production. Despite his success on stage, Lugosi was far from first choice to play Count Dracula. He lobbied the studio hard, however, and on agreeing to be paid the measly sum of $3,500, he was hired. Lugosi was joined in the production by another theatre actor reprising his role, Edward Van Sloan as Van Helsing. The film itself, though featuring some amazing set pieces and visuals, has not aged well. It's overly talky and stilted with a distinct lack of action, and it's mainly interesting due to, number 1, its historical importance, number 2, the first 10 or so minutes, which are brilliant, and most importantly, number 3, Bela Lugosi's performance. He is the definitive Dracula.
Listen to them, children of the night. What music they make.
Also definitely worth a mention is the performance of Dwight Fry playing the unfortunate, delightfully deranged estate agent Renfield.
Why, come from that hatchway.
Why, he's mad. Look at his eyes. Why, the man's gone crazy.
The leading man, David Manners, is, I don't want to be too cruel, but a complete snooze fest. It was reported that Todd Browning, normally an attentive director, was very disengaged from the project, leaving much of the work to his cinematographer, Karl Freund. Whilst the American production of Dracula was underway, a simultaneous Spanish-language version was also being shot. The Americans would work during the day and the Spanish would work at night. The Spanish version of the film is, in many ways, the artistically superior version, though Carlos Villarias's Dracula comes off as a little goofy compared to Lugosi's.
Soy Dracula. No podía usted ser más oportuno.
A silent version was also released due to the fact that not all cinemas back then were equipped for sound. Dracula proved to be a smash hit with audiences, and Universal were eager to continue capitalising on the success of horror pictures. Their next film would be Frankenstein. Lugosi was offered the role of Frankenstein's monster, but after shooting some test footage, he turned it down. He felt the character lacked range, had no speaking lines, and he didn't want to be covered in heavy makeup and prosthetics. This decision would prove to be, in hindsight, a rather disastrous career move. Boris Karloff was born in November 1887 as William Henry Pratt in Sussex, England. Whilst simultaneously working numerous hard, menial jobs across Canada and the US, he began a career in silent film in the late 1910s. He worked as an extra or as a minor character throughout the 20s, amassing around 80 films before he was finally cast in the defining role of his career, Frankenstein's monster. He was sitting in the Universal canteen one day when he was spotted by director James Whale, who approached him and remarked, "Your face has startling possibilities." The role of the monster was a very physically demanding one. The boots alone weighed 8 kilograms, and makeup took 4 hours every day to put on. It was legendary makeup artist Jack Pierce who created the iconic look of the creature. Pierce was generally thought of as quite an intimidating and demanding figure, though reportedly he and Karloff got on very well. Karloff removed his dental plate to create the hollowness in his cheeks to give the final corpse-like touch, and Frankenstein's monster was born. The director of Frankenstein, James Whale, was an Englishman previously known for his war pictures, and his macabre, darkly comic fingerprints are all over this film. Frankenstein is a far more dynamic and artistic picture than Dracula. The famous scene in which little Maria is thrown into the lake to her death caused shock and moral outrage. Several states requested cuts or censorship. Despite this controversy, critics generally responded positively, and the film was another box office success for Universal. Karloff was propelled to stardom and would continue to get top billing over Lugosi for the rest of their time at Universal. As Karloff went from strength to strength, Lugosi was often underpaid, underappreciated, and offered inferior work.
It's alive! Oh, in the name of God! Now I know what it feels like to be God!
James Whale would next turn his eye to The Old Dark House, a frightening but also deeply camp film, with Karloff again offering a largely mute performance as a violent, deranged butler. Joining him are Charles Laughton in his first Hollywood role, Ernest Thesiger as the overwrought Horace Femme, and a young Gloria Stewart as the glamorous Mrs. Waverton. The film garnered mixed reviews upon its release, though it's fared considerably better over time, with critics now hailing it as one of the best of Universal's first horror cycle.
And he said, "I will smite David even to the wall with it."
Meanwhile, Lugosi was offered Murders in the Rue Morgue, a much less successful picture about a mad scientist trying to create an ape-human hybrid. The film features one particularly memorable pre-code scene in which a girl is tied to a cross and tortured.
You're stubborn! Hush! We'll only last one more minute and we shall see. We shall know if you are to be the pride of science.
Such scenes would become more difficult to get away with as the production code came into more rigid use. In 1927, William Hayes, president of the Motion Picture Producers and Distributors of America, collaborated with studio execs to create a list of don'ts and be carefuls, rules to guide filmmakers in the production of their content. The list included such suggestions as omitting pointed profanity, nudity, the illegal traffic in drugs, miscegenation, etc., etc. These remained mere suggestions floated openly until 1934, when the production code was amended to require all films released on or after July the 1st to obtain a certificate of approval before release. Adherence to code rules would now be mandatory, greatly affecting horror content. Films such as The Mummy and The Invisible Man, starring Claude Rains, followed, with Frankenstein getting an equally brilliant and devious sequel, The Bride of Frankenstein. Bride may well be the peak of Universal's horror cycle. It's creepy, funny, and pretty heartbreaking. In 1934, Universal had the bright idea to team their two biggest horror stars, and a series of Karloff-Lugosi pictures followed, including The Black Cat in 1934, The Raven in 1935, The Invisible Ray, 1936, Son of Frankenstein, 1939, and Black Friday, 1940. My personal favourite of these team-ups is The Black Cat, in which Lugosi gets a rare chance to play a sympathetic character and Karloff a murderous war profiteer. 1930s horror is the story of Universal, and Universal is the story of 1930s horror. The two are inextricably wrapped up in each other. Whilst Universal dominated the American horror landscape of the 30s, other studios were also producing memorable, classic, and in some cases downright strange contributions to the genre. Paramount gave us 1931's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which bagged an Academy Award for lead actor Friedrich March. The most glamorous studio of them all, MGM, worked with Todd Browning to give us 1932's Freaks, the now legendary exploitation picture, which in my opinion still to this day gives us some genuinely disturbing scenes. In the same year we got Island of Lost Souls with Charles Lawton and Lugosi, and White Zombie, the first ever zombie movie. In 1933, Fay Wray was terrorised in RKO's monumental King Kong. Ray is often considered the first true Scream Queen, appearing in other such horror pictures as Dr. X and the early Technicolor, The Mystery of the Wax Museum. By the end of the 1930s, the steam was perhaps slightly running out of the horror engine, with diminishing returns both creatively and financially, and a slew of sequels oversaturating the market. Next time in episode 3, the 1940s. Werewolves. Cats. Korea Falls. And the end of horror as we knew it. Of course, this is an overview and it would be impossible for me to include every horror film from the 30s and make this show a reasonable length. Did I leave out your favourite? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this, please remember to like, subscribe and share with your friends. See you next time. And remember,
There are such things.
there are such things.